David and Colton Chorpenning are the father and son authors of What the F is Next. It's a system and process for answering that very question. Excited to have you gentlemen on. Welcome to the show.
Hey, George. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, excited to have you on. It's always a little bit tricky to dance with two other people, but tell us a little bit about your personal lives, some more about your work, and what motivated you to put pen to paper for the book.
Hey, yeah. I grew up in Colorado. My dad moved out here about 40 years ago and started his life in Manitou Springs, where I grew up. And I live in Denver now. I do real estate and also work at Google full time. And then we wrote this book together. It's been a great process over the last couple of years. Excited to chat with you guys a little bit about it.
David,
And
how about you?
okay, right. Um, well, my interest is been for a long time. Colton kind of alluded to it, to both motivate and inspire people to use intention more in their lives. And the book is definitely meant to be a tool to do that. People have been using intention their whole life, so it's really not something new for people. But I think what has happened for a lot of folks is that they just haven't maybe realized that they were making an intention, or they used it and they just forgot that they could use it again. And so we're hoping that with our title that we catch people's attention and they consider using intention more in their life.
I appreciate that. One of my favorite quotes, and it's a new one, so I'm probably going to get it wrong and won't be able to attribute it correctly. How's that for a favorite quote? Is that people need to be reminded more than they need to be instructed. So to your point,
Totally.
David, I think most of us understand maybe that intention is important, just like goal setting and gratitude, but just because we know it's important doesn't mean we're actually doing it.
Absolutely.
Well said.
So what are you hoping that the book does? What when somebody opens it, what are they going to get out of it?
Yeah, totally. So this book was intentionally designed to utilize the least amount of time possible to create the maximum amount of results. So unlike a lot of other like self-help or self-improvement processes out there, this one is like, much shorter and more concise. There's definitely value in kind of longer term, life development approaches. But we find that, in this busy kind of culture and life, that sometimes that can be overwhelming, as well as this process is not necessarily designed to help you find your life purpose. We think that your life purpose you've been actually already been living. And that is like a multifaceted process and journey that you need to go on using many processes and many approaches. So this is very much designed to just focus on one area of your life that you're looking to make progress in the next 30 to 60 days. So it's a concise kind of snapshot process that you can get done, in on a long flight or over a series of like a couple weeks at 1 hour at a time. So yeah, that's one of the specific notes of it.
And one of the things, George, that I would add to what Colton has said is when you said open the book, and I've written two previous books, which is Everyday Visionary, a practical guide to the life you desire, and then the field guide for what's next. And as you in there, you can determine it's very practical kind of sense. And Colton said that, Dad, if we're going to introduce this concept of intention in a little different manner, then we should tell our story. And so Colton and I both tell our story, and we try to be vulnerable about that as well, that this hasn't been a straight up path. It's been a winding path for both of us. So we've experienced how we've had intentions and they haven't been fulfilled, and then how we've dealt with that. So from your comment of what happens when you begin the book, hopefully people can relate to our journey a bit in some aspect. So there's definitely that. And Colton was kind of referring to this, but I think a really other important thing that we hope people get right off the bat is that you don't have to change. A lot of times when people are talking about a personal growth path, there's a sense they have to change. And our process really doesn't focus on that as much as helping people really inventory and connect to the things that they love, the things that they have been good at, the people have reinforced that for them. And that's the foundation then. So they have the confidence, I've done this before. I know this is something that I would love to do. So then creating a what's next that's challenging, they're going to be able to stay on that path.
I like it. You don't have to necessarily change. So let's not make wholesale changes here, because that's probably, I know, very intimidating for people. And I'm just going to put this book down if I have to change my entire life.
Right.
Totally. And then one other piece of that to expand is that it's based in a process known as appreciative inquiry. So instead of, there's kind of two ways to look at what you want and what you have in your life. And that is either from a asset-based model or a deficit-based model. The traditional basis for this kind of thinking has been a deficit-based model. It's like, why do I not have this? Why am I only making this much money? Or why am I single? Like, these are, things that you look at and you see what you don't have. But this process in appreciative inquiry really looks at the things that you do have. So the successes that you've had in the past, things that you've liked to do, things that you've already done, which is a much stronger and more positive way to think about and structure your next steps. And so then by looking at what you've already done and accomplished, you can then look at the resources and tools that you use to get there, and then resurface them and reutilize them and reinvest in those, which has proven to be a much stronger use of your resources and your time.
So if I am interested in, Colton, I was telling your dad that I've got 3 now young kids, 6, 3, and 2 months old. And if I'm looking at this situation, I'm in my 40s, I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I can be as strong as I can be for as long as I can be. Is that something that this process would apply to?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it'd be, what are the ways that you've felt strong in the past, right? Not like new things you're going to pull out of a hat to change your whole approach to this, because that's, such a big undertaking, and these new things you don't necessarily have in your tool belt, right? So start with the things that you've been successful, when you felt the strongest, when you've had the most physical, success, and then build from there. Maybe you add to those, but you don't just throw them out. You definitely focus in on the success you've had in the past.
And the other thing is, George, I think what you're, implying is that right now, family for you is what we like to use the term a big rock. I don't know if you read the Stephen Covey book.
I have.
Okay, then you're familiar with that term. And we lay that story out in the book as well. But that's part of our process too, help people identify what are their most important things. And then from that place, as Colton has already said, we have 20 questions to help a person connect to that person that they really are in that area of their life. What they really love, what they've been told they're good at, what they've got good feedback that they're good at. And from that, then you can build into the vision, the intention of what you want to become. So for example, you said you want to stay strong. And so it's filling that out. What does strong mean to you as a parent, for example, as a husband, that sort of thing?
I want to be physically strong. So I want a strong body so I can pick my kids up for as long as I can and keep up with them, physically. And I want to have energy and not feel tired at the end of the day and stuff like that.
Yeah, we've really done, looked at all the different ways to make that happen, to actually integrate a good intention in your life. And so we have science-based strategies that are simple, straightforward, and are grounded in a process that will work for you. So once you make that decision and really get clear on those things, that was a good start, right? You want to be strong enough to lift your kids. And that you're starting to get into, well-articulated positive intention.
So I love framework. I love process. Because I dislike kind of abstract. I just go ahead and do this, just do it. Well, if I don't know how, then I'm not going to be successful. I'm going to be frustrated. How many pages is the book? Sounds like it's really easy to consume.
Yeah, the book is about 100 pages. It starts with our analysis of how we get distracted, on the path of life to what we really want. Then it goes into my dad's backstory, my backstory. Then it unpacks the science and elements of science that are baked into the process. Then it sets you up with an understanding of how the process is going to work, as well as like a light little breath work kind of intentional setting up practice. And then there's 22 questions that you fill out that are all intentionally designed through an appreciative inquiry. And then you go through and you analyze those and you create basically a really concise what's next intention. And then you build that into your plan for what's next. And then there's a couple different tools. There's like a list of different processes that you go through to then make action on that in the next 30 to 60 days. And then check in on that intention where you're at then, and then decide if you should redo the process or take on another intention.
Nice. What's next intention? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you want to go ahead, Dad?
Yeah. So what's next intention is when we started to talk about that a little bit, George, when we were talking about what you were thinking of there for your life. And what's really important is, as Colton had mentioned, it's grounded in that process called appreciative inquiry, which is it's based on an asset base of what has worked for you. So your intention then has to be framed in a positive way. So it has to be positive, it has to be specific, and in most cases, for it to be transformative, it needs to be a stretch from where you are right now. And so those are some of the key components of creating a what's next intention.
So I want to be I want to be a good dad, and part of that is being physically strong and mentally strong, so I'm available to have a good relationship. That's an example of the intention.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Once you have the intention, go ahead.
Sometimes people ask, well, where does it start? And I think for intentions, they start with desire. So you would probably say the beginning of this conversation, but you're a very intentional person, so you may be further down the road than this. We'll just assume that you definitely have the desire to be healthy and strong for your children and in your life. So that's the first step. An example would be someone who would say, "Oh, I have the desire to live someplace where it's warmer," and that would be that desire. Okay, live someplace warmer. But then once you convert that to an intention, you might say, "I want to live someplace by the end of this year that's 60 degrees or more, and I want a job in elder care that supports my lifestyle." So now you've moved from a desire, just want to live someplace warmer, or in your case, I want to be strong. That was your first thing that you said. But then as you started to talk about it, you got better at really clarifying, what is it? Which means you're probably going to have some kind of strength training in your action list, correct? So that's a little bit of a way to define the importance of being clear, being positive about the kind of intention that you want, so you're more assured that you're going to get exactly what it is you do want at the end.
And it sounds like having the research and being able to cite just studies and things of that nature are very important to you, and able to show people, if you do invest the time and the energy and attention to read this book and to do the exercises, your odds of it happening, just based on what other people have done, are decent.
Absolutely. I'd say they're exponential.
You said it really greatly for us, George, because that
Exactly.
is true. We didn't just willy-nilly come up with this stuff. I mean, I spent a lot of time, doing research and coming up with, the best way. And there's like 4 or 5, as Colton says, things integrated into your life aspect. And yeah, it seems pretty simple and straightforward, but there are things there that we've already looked at and studied to make sure that you have the highest chance of making that happen. Yes.
Love it. So why go out in this project together? How did you decide to work on this and write this book together?
Yeah, so I'd say, the genesis of the process has been through 30 years of my dad's professional development work, as a life coach, helping organizations, individuals really figure out what's next. So he's been working on the science through that for 30 years, and then he published the field guides for what's next, which is kind of the actually putting pen to paper, create this process that you fill out, answer the questions, and create your what's next intentions. So that was about 7 years ago. After he published that, I did the process myself, and I filled it out and I answered the questions, created the what's next intentions, and then I kind of put it down and just put it on the shelf. And it was about 2 years later, I was looking through some, old boxes and found the worksheet or the field guide. And I looked through it and I saw that my what's next intention that I had created was to travel the world and learn how to surf. And the hair kind of stood up on the back of my neck because I had just come back from a 2-year trip around the world where I had learned how to surf.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I just actually completely achieved the intention that I created through basically subconscious intention, right? Like I filled this out and then I just put it away. And then that though had obviously had great, an impact into my actions to actually then go and take that on and then travel the world. So with that, then I was like, wow, there's something to this. So I pulled out, the next part of the field guide, which allows you to fill out multiple intentions inside of the book, which we still have today. And I was looking towards what do I want to do next in my career? I just came back from this trip and I filled out the questions and the worksheet, and my intention was really strong that I wanted to work at Google. That was like the next phase that I wanted in my career. And now I've been at Google for almost 5 years. So 2 huge things in my life, both were very clearly charted through doing this intention process. So it was about 2 years ago-ish that I was fly fishing with my dad, and we were just chatting about intention, where we're at, and I kind of proposed to him, hey, what do you think about maybe taking on a rewrite and an elevation of the process into kind of a cohesive, applicable tool that both explains the science and better sets up kind of the whole user experience of filling out the guide in a quick and concise way. So it's really targeted towards just one piece of your life. And we were just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's take this on. And so I took a first pass at writing a manuscript, and then he dove deeper into the science and explaining that. And then we just worked back and forth on it and developed this really great, concise book. And we published that about at the beginning of this year.
That's awesome. I'm sure that the intention was to work really closely and smoothly. Did it work out?
Yes, definitely. There's nothing like, we've always had a great relationship and done lots of projects or like lots of like trips and adventures together. But there's nothing like taking on more of like a applicable project like this to really bring you together and bring you closer. And that has happened. And that's been a really awesome element for both of us. There is definitely, certain parts of like filling out Google Docs and things like that that can be a little tricky and always are fun and interesting, and we've developed a great process for working together. And yeah, we came up with something really great.
Your thoughts on the process, David?
Yeah, and something that I wouldn't have thought about when I first had kids, when Colton was small and his sister was young. You're really involved in interacting with them at that age, and there's somewhat of a difference in you're the parent and they're the child. And what's really worked well for Colton and his sister and I and his mother is that as they progressed, we progressed with them. So we became more, and as we are now, we're peers. So we're on the same page. I'm not the sage person at the one end. Colton and his sister Chelsea are sage in a lot of things. They have opened my mind to so many different things that I wouldn't have if I was just a 71-year-old guy and didn't have a connection with people that are in their 30s. So that aspect of it also is a invaluable piece to the book, in that Colton is a kind of a first generation or second generation conscious intender, and I've been doing it for 50 years. So we're really giving people 2 different ways to look at this and try to understand the process of intention. So yeah, it's been a really great ride working with Colton on this project.
Oh, I love it. Certainly been fun to get to know each of you although briefly, albeit briefly, and I can already tell how impactful the book is going to be for a lot of people, and sort of combining different perspectives, even though you're cut from the same cloth, obviously. So David and Colton, thank you so much, both of you, for coming on the show. Where can people learn more? How can they engage? Where can they get their copy of What the F Is Next?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's been a great combo. The easiest place is thefisnext.com. That's our website, and there you can just go and it links straight to our Amazon. You can also look it up, What the F is Next, on Amazon, and you'll find it there. It's available via hardcover, paperback, audiobook, and is available in most countries in the world.
Excellent. And that was thefisnext.com?
That's right.
Okay, great. Well, if you enjoyed this as much as I did, show David and Colton your appreciation and share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Get your copy of What the F Is Next on Amazon, or go to thefisnext.com and start making the changes that you want in your life, and figure out what the F is next for you. Thanks again, David and Colton.
Thanks, George.
Thank you, George.
Till next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.